Disclaimer, we are not giving any investment advice on this podcast. Hey, welcome to Create Up, a podcast on leveling up both creatively and in life. I'm Will Ennis, and this is episode 11, the final episode of season 1. I just want to say thank you to everyone who's been listening. Every guest I've had the pleasure of interviewing this season, every person I ran ideas by behind the scenes, thank you so much. And I'm going to focus on some other projects now, but we'll be back with season 2 in the fall. And just like episode 10, we're going to focus on finance today. My guest is the head of investor relations for Hut 8. It's one of the longest running crypto mining companies in North America. Her name is Sue Ennis, aka my sister. Yep. We talk about the rise of Dogecoin, the humanitarian side of Bitcoin, and the influence Elon Musk has on the crypto market. In fact, this interview was done in 2 parts because of Elon, because hours after our conversation, he made some tweets about Bitcoin that created this huge drop in the price. So in part 2, Sue talks all about that situation. So without further ado, here's my talk with Sue Ennis, my sister, parts 1 and 2. Enjoy. I wanted to get you on just, I think a lot of people know about crypto to a degree, but there's so much that they don't understand with crypto. Mm-hmm. It's a pretty common thing, I'm sure. So I wanted to get you on, and you're head of investor relations with Hut 8, and I wanted to get into what does that mean? What is Hut 8? What it is you do?
So Hut 8 is one of the oldest and largest and innovation-focused digital asset miners in Canada. So you can kind of look at, in order for new coins, so Ethereum, Bitcoin, or just quote unquote digital assets to be added to the blockchain ecosystem, you need miners who are effectively like the minters of new coin. So in traditional gold systems, if you looked at gold miners as the guys who put on the hard hats and took the picks out and chipped away at rock to get nuggets of gold out to put into the economy, crypto miners do the same thing in the crypto economy, but instead of using hard hats and pickaxes, we're actually using computers and power to solve complex math algorithms to effectively spit out Bitcoin and then put it onto the rails of the internet and the financial payment system rails that happen on Bitcoin and Ethereum.
Wow. So is it just for Bitcoin or Ethereum, or you're saying it's all types of cryptocurrency? I'm a bit ignorant to this, but like Dogecoin is kind of new. Now, does that need to be mined like a Bitcoin needs to be mined?
No, so Bitcoin is, so we only do Bitcoin. Hut 8 only has been doing Bitcoin since about 2018. And we just recently made a purchase of some equipment to get into Ethereum mining. So Bitcoin is unique in the sense that it's fully decentralized. So there's no, CEO of Bitcoin who decides, how many Bitcoins are ever going to be released or at what time. There's no government of Bitcoin. It's a fully decentralized system that exists on top of the internet, and it's finite. There's only a certain amount of Bitcoin that will ever be in circulation. And there's also a fixed supply schedule. So every 4 years, the block rewards, so that's the reward you get as a miner for mining Bitcoin, cuts in half. So that's what makes Bitcoin quite unique from any of these other coins out there, because there is no central governing body. And that's sort of what makes Bitcoin so disruptive. And it was born in 2008 by an anonymous person or group of investors.
Satoshi Nakamoto.
Yeah, no one really knows if that's a person or if it's a group of investors, because the whole premise of Bitcoin is that there's no government that can take away your right to transact using it. There's no government that can inflate the value of it away. And it was born out of, after the 2008 crisis. So that's sort of what Bitcoin is.
Oh, so it was in reaction to the recession.
Well, and to the fact that it was financial institutions effectively completely manipulating the system that ultimately caused the crash. And that was sort of the birth of that there needed to be a sort of decentralized, non-controlled by one entity means of transaction and financial sovereignty.
That sounds awesome. And that makes me think about the potential humanitarian side of Bitcoin and the idea that it is decentralized. I think of,
Hmm.
we hear about a lot of third world countries that are in crisis with their governments and sort of stealing the money of the people. Could you speak on that, like Bitcoin's potential?
Yeah. So if you look at anywhere from places like Venezuela, Argentina, Lebanon, or for example, if I'm a female programmer in Afghanistan, as a female in Afghanistan, I'm not legally allowed to open a bank account, um, but I can get a job. However, I have to go through my husband in order to get paid for that. But with Bitcoin, you can get paid directly on your phone. So, or for example, in a country like Venezuela or what's happening in Lebanon, or like I said, Argentina right now, you have a government that's effectively inflating citizens' savings and wealth away. And there is no real alternative for store of wealth outside of the traditional monetary system. But Bitcoin is that sort of outside option of their current government and financial infrastructure to maintain wealth and to store wealth that your government can't seize from you or can't, inflate away.
Wow.
So that's some of sort of like the fundamental freedom and sovereignty. There's also about 1.8 billion people in the world who don't have access to formal identity. And without formal identity, so like a birth certificate or a driver's license, you can't really participate in the financial ecosystem, right? Like you can't open a bank account unless you have some form of identification. So there's 1.8 billion people who are operating on the fringes of society. And what Bitcoin, tools like Bitcoin do is they give them a medium of being able to transact, build wealth, build credibility, and quite frankly, increase their ability to for financial autonomy, right? And outside of tools like digital assets and Bitcoin, there's no real options, right? So that's sort of some of the fundamental principles about why this technology is so disruptive.
That's amazing because when I hear like mainstream news talking about Bitcoin, and if they're like poo-pooing Bitcoin, they're like Bitcoin is bad for these reasons. They always go to this narrative of how it's untraceable money, so that like all the drug dealers are going to take it.
Yeah.
Why do you think there's such a push to kind of slam Bitcoin? Because when you talk about all this stuff, it sounds so humanist.
Well, because it also effectively disrupts what and how traditional governments and financial systems have operated and quite frankly made money, right? Like if citizens have an alternative to the traditional banking system, then that's less money and less control that governments and those financial systems have over people's wealth and over people's mobility. Um, and yeah, that whole fear about it's for drug dealers and whatnot is really interesting. So for sure, I mean, when Bitcoin first started, it definitely was used on the dark web for sure. But the industry and the technology has evolved extraordinarily in the sense that there is a ton of tracking and tracing tools that can be used. And Bitcoin blockchain is actually one of the easiest ways to track as to where a Bitcoin has been, because it's a public bulletin board. So at any point you can track the entire history of where a Bitcoin has been on the blockchain. Sorry, using the blockchain. And there's also companies that have come out with ways to track, where has this Bitcoin been? Did it come from the dark web? Has it been used in dark web and illicit activities? And in terms of the total amount of actual Bitcoin being used now for illicit activities, it's about 0.01% of all transactions on the Bitcoin blockchain. Versus if you look at the US dollar, there's no way to track US dollars that have been tracked between hands, right? Like if,
All
if
right, if it's paper money.
if it's paper money, there's no record of whose hands that paper money has touched or where that paper money has been, right? Outside of bank accounts.
That's actually blowing my mind because like yeah, you hear about oh man, Bitcoin, it's all about like people on the dark web trying to do shady shit. And then you forget about the fact that it's way harder to trace if you're using paper money and doing some shady deals and just passing bucks back and forth.
Well, also, so I was gonna say, so about 1.01% of activity on the Bitcoin blockchain has now been attributed back to, dark market dark market activities,
Mm-hmm.
but about 2 to 5% of total global GDP using US dollars is done in illicit activity.
So when they say 0.1% has been attributed to dark web activity, like some shady shit, let's say,
Mm-hmm.
can they then act on that? Do they then know like we need to go after people that are doing these things, or is it
Yeah,
just
no, there absolutely is a way to trace back to sort of who and where was the last transaction that was done, where was that wallet, what online wallet did that Bitcoin come from? Was it at an exchange? Okay, let's talk to that exchange. Did they identify who that person was who set up that account? So there actually is quite a few ways for traceability of a coin. But my point is more so that 2 to 5% of total like US dollars in circulation are used towards dark market activity that you can't trace because it's paper money. So it's just funny the amount of scrutiny on Bitcoin when it's like, well, no one's really talking about. I mean, people have talked about the U.S. dollar in the past, but when you look at it comparatively, it's pales in comparison to the amount of illicit activity being done with U.S. dollars. Even banks alone, like major banks, even last year, actually don't have the numbers on me right now, but something like 100 have been charged hundreds of millions in fines for
Mhm.
facilitating money laundering and dark market and illicit activity. And that's through banks
Mhm.
who have, like, if you Google it, banks who have been fined for money laundering, like you have major banks of the world who come up as having, been charged and actually paid the fines out. So it's just funny the amount of finger pointing that goes on when in fact, like, sort of like the teapot calling the kettle black. So
So do you think this is the future? Do you think we're going to move away from valuing the dollar and becoming a society that interacts with crypto, or do you think it's going to live with like a couple paths? We're going to live with crypto and the dollar, or is the dollar kind of this dying entity? What do you think?
yeah, no, so I definitely don't think the US dollar is ever going to die. Like there's too many governments and financial systems and there's too much plumbing associated with the US dollar. But I do think that for sure, things like COVID have definitely accelerated digital trends, have definitely increased people's comfort with having to pay for things digitally. The growth of e-commerce, you have central banks now looking into digital currency because it is a lot easier for citizens to transact using digital currencies. It is becoming an increasingly online and digital world. So it does make sense that, these currencies would scale accordingly as well. And then along with that, it is sort of a boon for adoption of Bitcoin because you're getting more and more of the general public getting more comfortable with creating digital wallets and then just sort of understanding what exactly Bitcoin really is. So no, I don't think it's ever going to replace the US dollar. Absolutely not. But I do think for sure it will continue to thrive and different digital currencies will continue to thrive alongside the US dollar.
Hmm.
But no, I think they can coexist for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I noticed at the beginning of COVID, Bitcoin was at 7 grand Canadian. It was like
Yeah.
March. And then a year later, it's at 70 grand. And I'm curious, in your opinion, do you see this trend continuing with growth of Bitcoin? Like, where is Bitcoin headed, in your opinion, in the
hmm
next year, 5 years, 10 years? What do you think
hmm
is going to happen?
So one of the reasons for the extraordinary growth is the fact that you have major institutions who have now been investing in the space because with COVID, there's been an incredible amount of governments throughout the world just printing and printing and printing money. Like something like 6.6% of global GDP just was magically printed in 2020. And
Mhm.
so what that means is, an incredibly high risk and very strong likelihood towards inflation. So when inflation happens, the value of your assets go down. So oftentimes, institutions and pension funds and really everyone should be looking at, so how am I going to hedge if my dollar and everything I have denoted in dollars is losing its value because $1 is now only worth 75 cents. How do I hedge against inflation? How do I hedge against a declining value of my dollar? You look for scarce assets, so things like gold, so things like painting, so things like real estate. But But now institutions have been turning towards Bitcoin because I think a lot more people are wrapping their heads around the fact that, wait a minute, this is a non-government controlled, non-inflationary, set supply schedule rooted in cryptography on top of the internet.
Mm.
And so it's been a lot of institutional demand and investment that's been moving into the space, and that has really driven the price up. And also you have banks like JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, big investment advisors like Stanley Druckenmiller, who initially all, were calling Bitcoin like rat poison and garbage and for illicit activity, but who have actually now all changed their tune and are now coming out with Bitcoin products and ETFs. And so the reason for the run up in price is just that there's been this sort of increasing mainstream adoption of the actual digital asset class itself. So,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, do I think it's going to continue to sort of be a big part of the economy and have a greater global presence in sort of the financial services space? For sure. Where the price is going, I don't really know. Like JP Morgan thinks it's going to go up to $144,000. Some people say 500,000 per coin. I don't really know. I don't really have a personal opinion as to what price I think it's going to be at, but I definitely think it's here to stay, and that we're going to continue to see quite a bit of price action into it.
Cool. I guess as someone who I can sort of hang with you on this in a basic way, because I know you're really deep in on this and I only know it in a very general way. But I have certain questions, and maybe they're really dumb, but why will a Bitcoin drop like $7,000 in like 5 minutes? Like maybe I'm embellishing, but it seems to be so volatile. Is that it seems risky, but also it seems incredibly fruitful. Like it's weird. It's a cognitive dissonance for me. Why does it drop so drastically? All of them seem to drop like that in ways like, whether it's Doge, whether it's Ethereum, they have these very volatile, but they're so fucking exciting.
For sure. So I think that it's like the industry is still relatively young. So you still have a lot of, leverage that happens in the space. But quite frankly, like Bitcoin volatility wise actually has tempered quite a bit. I mean, we've been staying above this 50,000 floor for quite a while. And I think it's still a function of the fact that there still aren't as many regulations around trading practices that you have with other traditional instruments. So there is sort of still a degree of extra manipulation that can happen with the Bitcoin price. But and with altcoins for sure. Like look at what's happening with Doge. I mean, 99% of Doge's price rise right now is because Elon's tweeting about it, right? So
Yeah.
so it's still sort of like this new hype wild west. And so you see this sort of hysterical behavior that comes with it. But anyhow, I do think the volatility will smooth out, and it already has. Like I said, we've been sitting above this 50,000 price floor for quite a bit. And
That's a fair point.
mhm,
I have a question with Doge. So I kind of jumped on the Doge train, this joke token
mhm.
that everybody thought it was a joke, but I'm an Elon stan. So I was like, I want to get in on this. And there was all this hype around his SNL appearance that the Doge price was going to go up. And it was going up considerably
Mhm.
a day before the SNL appearance. But during the SNL appearance, where he's referencing Doge, he's calling himself the Dogefather, the price drops like significantly, like 30%, which seems counterintuitive. You think once he was on the show talking about Doge, it would hit the moon. In your opinion, why does it drop when he sort of is on the main stage talking about Doge?
I think because he's not talking in the bullish way that he wants, that investors want to hear from them. Like again, the herd mentality. Look, Doge is one of the triumphs of the internet. Like, and it's along the same lines of GameStop. Like, internet culture has completely changed the face of investing. Like, it's like the internet is this giant decentralized hedge fund where like millions of people can get together and influence the price of a stock or a meme based on like herd mentality. And it honestly is the triumph of internet, of like it's like this new class of investors and and rationale or sometimes deeply irrational behavior that drives these prices. And from what I heard, it's that, investors weren't satisfied with how quote unquote bullish Elon was speaking about Doge, and that's why it dropped. But then I heard that
Mm.
he's putting some sort of Doge satellite, and that someone is paying in pure Doge to join this mission to his new satellite or something like that. So I
So it
don't
may
follow
it may
Doge.
rise again. It may rise again.
Yeah, but it's still a joke. Like, it's not serious. But look, anyone who wants to gamble and make money off a joke and be opportunistic on like the herd and hysteria, I think fine, go ahead, like play. It's gambling, it's play. But like, you can't take Doge, for example, seriously. Like, Doge is like a psychology exercise. Like, it's not, and that's how you should play it. It's not an actual investment or asset class. It's like, it's a game.
Hmm.
It's a game. So
So I don't know if you saw did you watch SNL?
no, I didn't actually watch it. I keep meaning to watch it, but I didn't get to watch it.
Okay, so I know when he started talking about Doge, he was talking about Doge during Weekend Update,
Mm-hmm.
and the anchors were taking the piss out of Doge.
Mm-hmm.
So the bit was whatever Elon said about Doge, the anchors would say, okay, cool. What's Dogecoin? And he would talk about it and they go, okay, cool. What's Dogecoin? So was it the anchors lowering the value by taking the piss out of Elon in that situation?
No, I mean, maybe, but like, again, because it's all perception, right? Like Doge honestly does have no value. Like, Bitcoin has value as a store of value, as a means for transaction. Ethereum, you can build many applications on top of it, and an entire
Mhm.
decentralized infrastructure is being built using Ethereum. Monero and Zcash have some incredible privacy features and speed features. Doge is a joke. Like, Doge is a joke, and Elon's in on the joke. Like, and but can a guy like Elon, who has a cult like following, turn it into maybe something? For sure. But it's like, the reason why it's so volatile is because it's just like you're dealing with an irrational herd of investors that who are invested in it for not exactly like the right reasons. So it's prone to the swings and moods of the masses, you know?
So that sounds like a dangerous trend then.
I mean, I don't know if I'd say dangerous. You just have to look at it as a game. Like, you have to be ready to, when sentiment is at all-time high and you're looking at the chat rooms and everyone's like, go Doge, and Elon's tweeting his shit and the price is going up. I'd look at that as as an opportunity to sell. And then when things go back down, maybe you buy it again because Elon, and you wait and hope for Elon to say something crazy again that makes the price rally. But no, Doge is an actual like serious investment. No, it's a fucking meme, dog. It doesn't do anything. But you can look at it like a gambling game. It's roulette. It's the slots in Vegas. Like, it's just, there's nothing wrong with investing in it as long as you're like playing it like a game and not actually like a serious investable asset.
That's cool. That's cool to hear someone who's in the crypto space talk about Doge as a game. And for what you're explaining about Doge, it does seem like a game.
Yeah, it's just a game. It's a psychological exercise.
Well, then to see mainstream economists saying Bitcoin is a game. But when you talk about Bitcoin and the positive aspects, I'm like, oh, no, there's some real value there. And it's a scarce resource, added value there.
Mm-hmm.
But I think of traditional things like gold, for example. I know gold is a scarce resource, but outside of that, what value does gold have? Like, it seems like it can't hold a candle to Bitcoin, which can kind of like save people in dire predicaments in like the third world. And I think about like, what does gold do? Like, at any point, will people just go, why the fuck do we care about this rock that's in the earth that's scarce? But other
No,
than it being like shiny, why do we give a shit about
I mean,
gold?
gold actually is used in like semiconductors. Like, there is obviously the jewelry value of gold as well.
But the jewelry value of gold is literally it's shiny and it goes on your neck. Like
No,
what
for sure, sure, but it is still used in semiconductors, and again, it is still technically like a 3,000-year-old store of wealth. Is it transferable and decentralized the way that Bitcoin is? No, but again, it's for 3,000 years you've had institutions back their reserve asset, their fiat reserves backed by gold. The US used to be backed by, $1 would be like 1 ounce of gold, I think it was, or a portion of gold. And I do still think there is a place for gold because as central banks continue to look at ways to perhaps reduce their reliance on the US dollar, there will be, they will be looking at ways to, okay, so do I back my central bank digital currency? Do I back it by oil? Do I back it by, like, what do I back it by? And gold sort of is the next intuitive scarce asset that you can build fiat reserves against. And you can use Bitcoin for sure, but like, I don't think that the entire world is going to back their economies or their fiats by Bitcoin. I think all scarce assets have an opportunity.
There's one thing, as again, I'm just an outsider. I'm totally not in this world. The one knock against Bitcoin, which I could think gold would trump it as a scarce resource, is that it's physical. So like if some solar flare like wiped out all electronics, or even just like all these doom like naysayers saying like the world is coming to an end like this year and all this
For
shit.
sure.
If society collapsed and maybe like internet providers all went down, then Bitcoin is essentially gone. As much as I hearing you talk about it and I've loved it for a while, it is vulnerable that it has to exist in this ethereal space of technology, where gold, I can have it in my pocket right now and it's just there.
For sure. You also have like governments worldwide have accepted gold almost unanimously as an alternative store of wealth and as like an acceptable scarce asset. And to try and globally change that perception and that legacy, that 3,000-year-old legacy, would be very difficult. And it's true, gold doesn't have the same perhaps vulnerabilities that transacting with Bitcoin has. So Bitcoin itself has never actually been hacked, but for sure, online wallets, hot wallets, the on and off ramps for Bitcoin absolutely are still at risk of hacking. And so yeah, Bitcoin's not without its sort of vulnerabilities or weak points. So I don't like it when people say like, oh, it's gold or Bitcoin. I think the two can absolutely coexist in that same vertical of scarce stores of assets, an alternative to like melting fiats.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of like diversifying, I think gold is important in case the internet doesn't exist one day, like some weird shit. I think it's good that we have gold.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. And like I said, as you look at places like China, or there's like 45 different countries right now that are testing a central bank digital currency, the chances of that being backed by Bitcoin when Bitcoin is still so volatile in terms of price versus gold, which is relatively stable. I mean, gold also has its price fluctuations, but it's got a 3,000-year-old legacy as a store of wealth. I think that we're going to see an uptick in gold readoption and sort of acceptance in the mainstream, and not as this like legacy asset, as again central banks digitize their currencies and look to back it with something. I think gold is going to come back into the mainstream.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so I don't know much about you in Hut 8, but are you allowed to give like financial advice?
No, I'm just like investor relations. So if people like want to know about the company and like the direction, then I'm the person who talks to people.
But if you were going to give advice like, oh, gold's a cool investment, like you can't say that.
No, I can say gold. I think gold's a great investment. I own gold for sure. Yeah, I think no like portfolio theory 101 is like own as many uncorrelated assets as possible so that when one's down, chances are the other ones are going up. So if you own a little bit of US dollars, you should own a little bit of gold. You should own a little bit of Bitcoin. Maybe own a little bit of fucking Doge if you want to play around. Like there's nothing.
Yeah.
Like I think there's room in a portfolio for all of it.
Hey, what about okay, this is weird, but all these platforms that hold cryptocurrency, um this makes me want to do cold storage, which sounds confusing, and I gotta learn about it, whatever. But like all these platforms, like I just saw some article. I don't even know if I could say the company name, but I'm gonna say it. CoinSeed is under investigation for shady shit. You hear this a lot with different platforms, as me and you both know. Someone wanting to get into crypto, it's like, how do you trust these platforms, man? They just seem to always be being under investigation.
For sure, but that's why you want to look at like the countries where these platforms reside. Like chances are, I mean, there has definitely been platforms in Canada that are under investigation or have gone completely obsolete, like Quadriga in Canada. But, as the industry has continued to mature, regulation has also grown as well. And the rules around transacting as a platform or service provider in the space have also changed. So again, if you're transacting with a platform in the US and Canada, for example, chances are, regulators are very aware of this platform. There is some recourse if things go awry. So it is sort of just a function of, think about what country you're transacting in. Are the laws and regulations transparent in that country? And then sort of use that as your guideposts. Like I would say Canada is a very safe place. The US is a pretty safe place from a regulatory standpoint. If you want to buy cryptos, like Voyager Digital is a fabulous platform in the US. And in Canada, I'd say probably CoinSquare is the best one as well. There's a lot of regulatory oversight. So chances are you're dealing with a solid business.
Cool, man. Well, my brain hurts.
Okay, nice. Yeah, go have a little brain massage.
That sounds amazing. What the heck is a brain massage?
Yeah, go decompress, watch some cartoons, buy some more Doge, do something to, because there's lots to learn in the space. But yeah, no, I'm glad we could have a chance to chat about it.
All right, so that is the end of part 1 of our interview. Shortly after it, Elon's tweets sent the Bitcoin price crashing down, so I got Sue back on about a week later to talk about it all. So let's cut to that talk, part 2, with Sue Ennis right now. Sue, welcome back. Thanks so much for making time again.
Yeah, no worries.
I know you guys are really busy, and the last we talked, we were talking about Bitcoin and Elon Musk. And we were talking about how Bitcoin has been maintaining this $50,000 floor for quite a while and was performing really well this year. And soon after our interview, Elon Musk posted something on Twitter about the bit mining process being bad for the environment. And then Bitcoin just tanked overnight. It was crazy.
Yeah. So I think that there's definitely some ulterior motives here at play. So for a company like Tesla to spend 1.5 billion on a Bitcoin purchase, and then 1 month later or 2 months later to come out and say we had no idea it was bad for the environment and then poo-poo it smells a little fishy. I mean, he then later came out and said he just doesn't like Bitcoin that's mined using fossil fuels or things like coal, which is okay, but there's a couple different there's some speculation going on as to what the actual ulterior motives were. So number one, Tesla gets quite a few subsidies from the government for being an ESG play. So there was some speculation that perhaps you got pushed back from the government of California for making this big purchase and being pro Bitcoin, which is some operations that mine Bitcoin do use coal and unsustainable mining practices, but that's quite misguided to say the whole industry is done unsustainably. That's quite frankly not true. For example, Hut 8 mining, we're partially natural gas, but also wind powered. There's hydro powered miners, there's miners again at Hut 8. We're looking at how do you use flare gas to convert that into digital energy and mine Bitcoin. So it was extremely misguided and fishy that Elon, who's so brilliant, came out with sort of a blanket statement like that. I think he knew intentionally what he was doing. And another reason why this is fishy is because you then see him go and pump Dogecoin. So Dogecoin is actually also proof of work and creates the same sort of energy footprint that Bitcoin has, although obviously Dogecoin is not designed exactly like Bitcoin. It does still have that sort of same quote unquote environmental impact. And then you also look at, how much environmental degradation does Tesla do creating the materials to create their cars. For him to come out and just call out Bitcoin, again, is very suspicious. In my opinion, and again, this is just speculation, I think he's gearing up for a Tesla coin. He has this incredible Bitcoin reserve. Obviously, he has so many different product lines. He's a man of the future, et cetera, et cetera. And there are very sustainable ways to mine cryptocurrency. So my guess is that this is ultimately just a big setup for him to launch a Tesla coin. That's my guess.
So What do you think moving forward is going to happen to Bitcoin? The price has dropped a lot. Do you think it's going to go back up?
Yeah, I do absolutely think it's going to go back up. Look, the fundamental use case of it being a decentralized network, a store of value, an alternative to never-ending money printing that's happening right now. And once we get through and more messaging around the fact that Bitcoin is not necessarily bad for the environment, I think we're definitely going to see a price rally. You have companies like MasterCard and Visa who are coming out with crypto rails and Bitcoin support. You have um, banks like JP Morgan and Morgan Stanley coming out with Bitcoin product. Like the industry is maturing. There are so many different ways to access Bitcoin right now that I don't think that this is, the end of Bitcoin. It still is, subject to volatile swings, but I think a lot of that has to do with sort of misguided media and sort of FUD spreading.
What's a FUD? What's FUD spreading?
Fear, uncertainty, and doubt.
Oh, okay. That's a good acronym. Good acronym to clarify. I like that. I like that.
Hmm.
I can't think of anyone more powerful than Elon Musk right now when it comes to his ability to affect the markets.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you've ever seen anything like this.
No, not really. But again, I think this sort of goes to like the triumph of internet culture. I don't even know if I would just say it's Elon's impact on the market. I think it's that like the internet is now the new decentralized hedge fund. Like if you even look at what the internet has been able to do from a mobilization perspective of being able to like with GameStop, with AMC, these effectively dying companies, people have gotten together and been able to, create these tremendous price swings that quite frankly aren't always based on fundamentals anymore. It is definitely a new phenomenon and Elon is part of it.
Mhm.
But I wouldn't say it's exclusive to Elon.
Would you be interested in something like a Tesla coin yourself from an investment perspective?
Um, I mean, look, I'd probably buy some for shits and giggles just because it probably would have a lot of cult like hysteria that comes with it. And maybe I could make some money off of it. I think it'd be a lot better investment than Dogecoin. Like there are actually tangible products that Elon has come out with in the battery space that I think are really interesting. Obviously, the car space as well, but particularly his battery contributions I think are really cool. Look, some of the technology that is used to mine Bitcoin actually does coincide with some of the technology Elon has come out with. Like one of the initiatives Hut 8 has is we're going to capture flare gas from oil and gas sites and use that to turn it into digital energy. But part of that whole production process involves putting a satellite on top of the mining infrastructure to effectively put the Bitcoin onto the internet. And we will be using the Starlink Tesla satellites to do it. So this is what I'm saying that I think Elon's playing dumb here in a lot of ways. I think that his technology actually is quite complementary to Bitcoin. I think he is quite misguided about doing this Bitcoin is bad for the environment sort of FUD, then kind of taking it back. And again, I think it's just a huge setup for Tesla coin, is what I think. But I mean, who knows?
Well, I kind of like his idea of putting pressure, whether it's there's something else behind it or not. I like the idea of him pushing environmentalism. His innovation seemed to coincide with environmentalism. For example, the electric car. Now, obviously, he has a carbon footprint, like making the batteries, this, that, and the other. Do you think Bitcoin could start to innovate and be better for the environment moving forward? Do you think that's something that they could do?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. There's tons of sustainable. And again, I think it is not a bad thing. Like I think Elon's being fishy, but I don't think sparking this debate is a bad thing for Bitcoin. Like there's a ton of initiatives that private players in the Bitcoin ecosystem have started. One of them is the Crypto Climate Accord, and Hut 8 Mining has signed on to that. And that is about, making Bitcoin 100% carbon neutral within, I think, the next year or two, or sorry, maybe next 5 years, I think it is. So look, it's not a bad thing that it's brought this conversation to the forefront, but to say that Bitcoin is unsustainable and to just assume or put the message out there that that's sort of the be all and end all, that's not accurate at all. The industry is constantly evolving, and that yeah, I think we will definitely see a push towards more sustainable mining practices, and it's not a bad conversation to have out there.
So overall, this news of Elon tweeting this, do you think it has an overall positive impact on the crypto space or a negative one?
No, I think it has a positive impact. I do. I do. I mean, right now, again, there's a lot of hysteria, and it's not just around Elon. There's sort of hysteria around the China banning Bitcoin right now. There's a huge short happening right now with hedge funds on Bitcoin. It just happens to be a very hairy week. But no, I think that, like I said, I think we're going to hear from Elon again quite soon about his involvement in the blockchain and Bitcoin ecosystem. And what that looks like, I'm not sure yet, but I don't think this is the last we've heard of him. And again, I think pushing this conversation around Bitcoin and the environment is a good one because there is a lot to be said and a lot to be still developed.
Amazing. Thanks, Sue. This is awesome. I think this really cleared up the drama of this past week. And again, thanks for your insight. It's always awesome.
Yeah, no worries. Okay, I will talk to you later.
Okay, thanks.